Okay, good morning, everybody. Today is the fast of the 17th of Tammuz, even though technically it's not the 17th of Tammuz today. Today's the 18th of Tammuz. But since the 17th of Tammuz fell out on Shabbos, so it gets pushed off to Sunday. The same thing is going to be true with Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av comes out this year, actually comes out on the Shabbos, August 6th, but it gets observed on the 7th. It gets pushed off a week to the 7th. I mean, a day, sorry, to the 7th. So today's the 17th of Tammuz, and we'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about what some of the significance of this day and why it's a fast day. But I want to jump in. I hope it's okay and no one's going to get too upset, but I'm going to skip a tiny bit over here and move forward to chapter 5. Okay, so chapter 4, we're discussing in the Path of the Just, the Mesilat Yesharim of the Ramchal. We're discussing the character trait, the attribute of Zehirus. And as we know, from having been involved in this for quite a while, Zehirus it's translated as vigilance, but what it means in real terms is living a life where instead of just going through our behavior robotically without really thinking about who we are and what we're doing and how we want to be in this world, we actually take the time to analyze our lives, our goals, and our mission in life, and to consistently be checking in, in terms of our progress and where are the areas that we need to develop and what are the things that we need to avoid. Living a thoughtful life, living a what was the word I used before? I don't remember. I'm fasting. The fast is almost over here, but living a deliberate life. And we talked about that, and then we talked about the way to acquire Zehirus. What are the means to acquire this attribute? And now, what the Ramchal does is he shifts gears, as he will with each and every one of the different midos, the qualities that we're going to be studying, and he goes into the next section, which is what prevents us, what gets in the way, what are the factors that detract from our ability to acquire Zehirus, to live in this focused, deliberate, examined way. So before we jump in, maybe I'll just Julian, I was just going to say, I want to give people an opportunity to, before we see what the Ramchal says, it's always interesting to hear first what people might think. Like, what would be, if we were going to do a survey says, a Family Feud survey says, what are the main things that prevent us from living examined lives, from living focused, deliberate lives where we set goals and we're spiritual, we set spiritual goals and we're trying to come closer to Hashem, and we're analyzing our lives and our days and our actions and our activities to see if they're bringing us closer to that goal, if they're bringing us further away from the goal. What are the main factors that would detract from the acquisition of Zehirus? Julian, is that what you were going to jump in with? Yeah, please, Julian.
Sorry.
All right. Let us say Julian. He had his hand up. Julian, I get that. Okay.
I just wanted to say the book I'm using uses the word watchfulness.
That is a great translation. I like that a lot. Watchfulness is a great translation because it means that I'm paying attention. I'm not just going through life, jumping on the treadmill. I think what happens a lot of times in life, from my observation, is that at a certain age, we jump on a treadmill and we start going. And that, by the way, the age of jumping on that treadmill starts earlier and earlier. It used to start. Sorry? Oh, it used to start a lot earlier. But it used to start a lot later, but now it starts early. We jump on the treadmill. The treadmill is like, okay, I'm going to school and I got to get grades so that I can get into the best college, so that I can get the best grades in college, so that I can get the best job, so that I can get the best job, so that I can make money, so that I can buy a house, so that I can and it keeps going so that I can send my kids to school, so that my kids can get into the best school, so they can get a good, and it's a treadmill, and it just goes round and round and round. And that's the opposite of Zahirus. That's the opposite of watchfulness. Zahirus means I'm not on that treadmill. I'm thinking deliberately and watchfully about what I want to achieve and accomplish in my life. And I like that. Thank you, Julie. I like that translation. But going back to my question, what, Julie, if you want to jump in with this, what are these detractors? What, we all, if I were to take a survey of 100 people in a room and say, raise your hand if you would like to live a more watchful life, a more deliberate life, a more focused life, a more examined life, a life that's more in line with your deepest core values and dreams and yearnings and belief system. Everybody would raise their hand. Everybody. No one would say, no, I don't. I actually prefer to live a life completely inconsistent with my deepest sense of values and beliefs. No one's going to say that. So why don't we do it? What gets in the way? That's the question that I wanted to throw out. And then we'll see what the Ramchal says. The Ramchal is going to identify 3 particular areas or categories. Yeah, go ahead, Julie. What were you going to say?
Well, I think there's a lot of things. There's, kid issues or health issues, and your job. It's just society. Unless you really live in a society where everyone is kind of on that same path, it's really hard to stay on that path when everyone else is going in a different direction.
Right. So I would take that, the things that you mentioned, and say the first thing that gets in the way of us living that way is life. Right? Life is just there's just too much to get done. There's just too much to think about. There's just too much that comes up and presents immediate concern, and I have to handle these things. It's a luxury to live an examined life. Who's got time to sit down and think about how I want to live my life and where I want to go with my life? That's nice, but that's a luxury that I don't have, because I got to figure out how to pay for my kids' college education, and I have health issues that I may have to deal with, and I just have things, life. Yeah.
Inertia. Newton's first law.
Inertia, absolutely, right? It's a lot easier not to do this, right? So
Well, it takes an outside force to move a body at rest. So if you block out all outside forces by getting caught up in the rat race, inertia keeps you where you are spiritually.
Keeps you right where you are spiritually. Well said. Excellent. Excellent. Any other thoughts on that before we jump in to see what the holy Ramchal has to say on the matter?
Ego too.
Ego. Yeah, ego gets in the way. Okay, let's see what he says. There are 3 factors.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like sort of mindless diversions, instead of thinking about, heavier stuff. Sometimes we just do more things to turn off the brain just because of, needing a rest or a break, and sometimes we just go to more diversions.
These things?
Yeah,
Right?
Sure, yeah. That's culprit number 1, yeah.
Culprit number 1, right here. Although that picture's pretty cute, but yeah, right? That's it. That's culprit number 1. Okay, I agree with that entirely. So there are 3 factors that detract from the trait of Zahirus and distance a person from it. Remember, the goal is we want to come close to Hashem. That's why we're here, purpose of our lives. In order to do that, we need to stay focused. We need to live lives where we have clear goals defined. What's going to bring us closer to Hashem? What's going to move us away from Hashem? We have to know what those things are. We have to be able to examine our lives and look at our actions and our activities and our thoughts and our behaviors and say, are these bringing me closer to Hashem? If so, I want to do more of them. Are they bringing me further from Hashem? If so, I need to find a way to eliminate them from my behavior. Okay, so there are 3 factors that detract from our ability to acquire Zahirus. The first is involvement and preoccupation with worldly matters, also known as life. Okay, life gets in the way. The second is levity and mockery. That's something that may not have come up necessarily, and people may not have guessed that, and we'll have to understand what that means. We'll go into that in greater detail, of course, as we get further along. And the third is bad company. Bad company. Isn't that the name of a 70s band? And the it was, right? And the bad company, right? People that we choose to spend time with, the people that we identify with, people that we hang out with. That can play a major role in all of our midos, but in particular in living this type of life. Right? Live a life of, life is great, and I'm here, have a great time, party, go out, have a good time all the time. Or am I living a more focused, examined life? That's going to depend a lot on the people that I associate with and the people that I spend time with. Just how we are, we're social creatures. So we'll get to number 2 and 3 later, but for this morning, we're going to focus on 1. So number 1 is preoccupation with worldly matters. So with respect to involvement and preoccupation with worldly affairs, we've already spoken of them above in chapter 2. We touched on it briefly in chapter 2, where we explained that when a man is preoccupied, man means human being, a person here, in general, using the general term. When a person is preoccupied with the affairs of this physical world, his thoughts are bound by the chains of the burden that are upon them, and it becomes impossible for his thoughts to focus on his deeds to ensure that they are the proper ones. Okay, so when we are at that stage in life where we are working like crazy, and all we can really think about is jobs, our careers, or whatever it is that occupies our time in life. When those things are so dynamic and so dominant in our lives, and they take over completely, then we let go of these, more sort of systemic, critical human requirements of self-analysis and directional recalculation of life and life's values and purpose and flow. So that is the number 1 thing, right? When things become so urgent and the burden, the physical world becomes such a preoccupation. Now, this is a problem mainly for younger people. Okay, I don't know if you noticed or not, but if you look on the screen, you'll notice that. Well, I don't want to say this insultingly, but like the young people are not here. Okay, where are the young people? Young people are not here. Where are they? I don't know where they are. No one knows where they are. They're busy. They're doing stuff. And if they're not, they're maybe trying to sneak in 18 holes of golf before they have to, get back. Whatever. Life takes over. And at a certain stage in life, when most people wake up and say, hey, you know what? I have time on my hands, and there's things I want to do, and there's things, and I want to learn more. I want to become wiser, and then they jump on the bandwagon, so to speak, of learning Torah and investing in their spiritual lives and their spiritual growth. But when people are young, they're not in that mindset. They're just working, trying to figure out how to make money, how to support their family, how to send their kids to college. And that takes over, and that becomes such a burden that it becomes impossible to focus on the matters of watchfulness, the matters of zehirus, the matters of living the examined life. So he mentions how to avoid this obstacle. So when the sages, peace be upon them, perceived this problem, they said this was the remedy that the great spiritual giants, the sages of the Talmud, came up with, how to combat this problem. Right? In other words, 1800 years ago, the Mishnah was written, and the rabbis were recorded as having shared their wisdom in the form of Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers. They recognized this problem, and they said the following: here's the solution. reduce your involvement in business endeavors, and involve yourself in Torah study. Okay? Reduce your business endeavors and involve yourself in Torah study. In other words, balance your life in such a way, even when you're young, don't wait until you're retired, but even when you're young, balance your life in such a way where it's not all about work. It's not all about your preoccupation with your business endeavors. You're also at the same time dedicating part of your day, part of your time to acquisition of wisdom, to internalizing learning and internalizing Torah values and practicing Torah values and living by Torah values, right? So that I can live that way when I'm young too. I don't have to wait until I'm retired and I don't have anything going on in my life to start learning wisdom. I could do it when I'm 20 or 30 or 40. But that's what the rabbi said. The rabbi said, if you want to have any chance of acquiring this attribute of zehirus, of living a watchful life, reduce your involvement in business endeavors and involve yourself in Torah study. For indeed, some involvement with business is essential for a person for the sake of his sustenance. But it is not necessary that his business involvement be so extensive that it does not leave him any room for his divine service. Indeed, this is why we are commanded to set aside fixed times for Torah study every day. Right? There's actually a Torah commandment to set aside time to learn Torah every day. Why? Why is that so important? Every day, Torah study? Yeah, every day, Torah study. There's got to be some divine service. There's got to be a sublime component to my life every day. This is what I actually wanted to take a little detour for a minute and talk about the fast day today, the 17th of Tammuz. It's actually, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's actually the 18th of Tammuz. The fast is pushed off because it came out on Shabbat, but the 17th of Tammuz, which was yesterday, is the beginning of the period of what we call the 3 weeks of mourning on the Jewish calendar, beginning with the 17th of Tammuz, going and concluding with Tisha B'Av, which is 3 weeks later, 3 weeks from today. And the bookends of the 17th of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av are fast days. And there are many reasons listed in the Talmud why this is a fast day. The main one being that it was on this day during the time of the Roman siege of Jerusalem, during the times of the Second Temple, that the city was surrounded. The city of Jerusalem was surrounded by the Roman legions. There's just a little interesting side note. There's a village. Just if you look outside from our house, there's a valley, and then up the hill on the other side there's an Arab village called Beit Iksa. Always found that to be a strange name. Iksa, like ik, like ich. Like that's how I feel when I look at that village. It's like Iksa, because like I don't know what's going on over there, but I don't think they like us too much. But I finally found out why that village is called Beit Iksa. Because in Arabic, Iksa means X. X, like in Hebrew, X means X. And in Arabic, Iksa means X, the letter X. So why is that village is called the House of X? Why? Because during the Roman siege, the Roman legions were camped on the hill across the valley from us, where that village stands today. And the Roman legion that sieged Jerusalem, that surrounded the walls of Jerusalem on the 17th of Tammuz, was the 10th Legion, the Roman 10th Legion. And 10 in Roman numerals is X. So that hilltop was called Beit Iksa, the hill of the X, the 10th Legion, the 10th Roman Legion. Okay, so that's why that village is called Beit Iksa. So I finally learned that. I learned that last week. So the Roman legion surrounded the city, Jerusalem. And that's like the main reason why we fast on this day. But there are other reasons, actually 4 other reasons. One of them given is that on the 17th of Tammuz, Batal Tamid, that there's a daily sacrifice It's called the Korban Tamid. The daily sacrifice is brought every day, actually brought twice a day. When I say daily sacrifice, I mean every single day. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Shabbat, every holiday. The daily korban, a sheep, one sheep in the morning and one sheep in the afternoon. That's two sheep. Or two sheep. Anyway, I'll leave that to the English majors over here. Two sheep. Sheep? Which one is it? No, it's bothering me. Jeffrey? Sheep or
Yeah.
sheep?
Yeah.
Plural.
Pardon me?
What's the plural of sheep?
Sheep.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. Two sheep, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And on the 17th of Tammuz, they stopped bringing this daily sacrifice during the times of the siege on Jerusalem. Why? Because they ran out of sheep. Eventually, they couldn't get these animals in anymore. There was a blockade. They couldn't get the animals in. And the Korban Tamid, the daily offering, stopped. And because of that, we fast. I mean, okay, what's so tragic about the daily offering stopping? I mean, I get it. Yeah, that was a big part of what went on in the temple. They brought this daily offering, but like 2,000 years later, we're still fasting on this day because the daily offering was concluded. The daily offering was ended. It came to a standstill. So shelve that question for a second. I want to share with you an amazing statement from the rabbis of the Talmud. So there was a rabbi who you probably heard of. His name was Ben Zoma. Ben Zoma. Where have you heard of Ben Zoma? Where does that name ring a bell from? Ben Zoma?
That's all.
Yes.
I got it.
Haggadah. Is that what you said, Len? The Haggadah, right? Yeah, is that what you said?
No,
Len?
I said the Pardes. Was
Pardes,
with Ben
yeah.
Zoma, Ben Azai, Akiva,
Yeah.
and the Acher all went.
All went into the orchard, right? So Ben Zoma, one of the very well-known sages of the Mishnah, actually. Ben Zoma stands up in the base medrash and he starts a debate. He basically says, what do you think is the most important verse in the Torah? Like if I were to, give you, say, one verse that encapsulates everything, what is it? That was the debate that he threw out there in the study hall. So what do you think if I asked you that question? One verse. You got one verse to say, you meet a Gentile in the elevator and he says, tell me about your religion. Tell me one verse. Give me one verse that sort of sums up or encapsulates everything that your religion is all about. One verse. What are you going to say?
What you would not want someone to do to you, don't do this to other people, to your neighbor.
Okay, that's a concept or a principle. It's not a verse, but there is a verse in the Torah that's similar to that, which is v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, excellent. Jeffrey, that was a phenomenal answer. That was not the answer that Ben Zoma gave, but that was the answer that Ben Nanas gave. One of the other sages of the Mishnah stood up and he said, okay, I got it. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. That's the most all-inclusive verse in the Torah. And we know, by the way, the story with Hillel and the convert who came to Hillel, wanted to convert, and Hillel said, okay, love your neighbor as yourself. The rest is commentary. I'm paraphrasing. Okay, so that's what Ben Nana said. That's not what Ben Zoma said. Ben Zoma said something else. Think Jewish national anthem, Jewish mission statement. How about Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad? The Shema, God is one. Everything in the Torah is about the oneness of Hashem, a relationship with the infinite being, total commitment and unbreakable Emuna, trust, belief in the oneness of Hashem. That's what Ben Zoma said. Ben Zoma said, okay, you want to know what the most important verse in the Torah is? It's the Shema. Everything else is commentary. Okay, Ben Nanas, as I said, stood up and he said, no. That's very nice. Belief in God and oneness of the Creator. That's all nice, but that's really very philosophical. And you know what? I'll tell you something even more important. Other people. Ben Adam Lamakom, the mitzvahs between man and God. Yeah, the man to God mitzvahs are really important. But Ben Adam Lachavero, the mitzvahs between man to man, those are more important. And you want to know the one verse in the Torah that summarizes all of the man to man mitzvahs? That's the Ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your neighbor as yourself. So we got basically Ben Zoma saying man to God is the most important. You got Ben Nanas saying that man to man, love your neighbor as yourself is the most important. Then a third rabbi stood up. He said, nope, you both have it all wrong. I'll tell you the most important verse in the Torah. Most important verse in the Torah is a verse in this week's Parsha. This coming week's Parsha for you. This last week's Parsha for us, because we're still one Parsha ahead of you guys, which is very confusing. But hopefully we'll catch up soon. You'll catch up soon. And that is the verse in this coming week's Parsha, which is which means you shall bring one sheep as a sacrifice in the morning, and you shall bring one sheep as a sacrifice in the afternoon. That's the most important verse in the Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and learn. Then fourth rabbi stands up and says, okay, let's vote. I say that the most important verse is like Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, the third opinion, and they vote. And basically the agreement is that the most important verse in the Torah is bring one sheep in the morning as a sacrifice and bring one sheep in the afternoon as a sacrifice, which is totally bizarre. I understand the Shema, oneness of Hashem, total Amunah, belief in Hashem. I understand v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. All the mitzvahs to man are found in that one basic principle of love somebody like you love yourself. But how could you possibly say that the most important verse in the Torah is this verse of bring one sheep as a sacrifice in the morning and one sheep as a sacrifice in the evening? So I'll tell you the insight that from the Maharal from Prague and others who elaborate on this. You can have all of these spiritual ideas in the world. You can have all the inspiration. You can, go hear an amazing class or lecture, or you can go to a discovery seminar, or you can go on a trip to Israel, and you can be filled with inspiration. Wow, I get it now, and I feel so close to Hashem. Or you have a beautiful hike, Yom Kippur service, or you feel something that enlightens you or uplifts you, and you feel inspired, and you feel close to Hashem, and you feel connected. That's great. But you know what's going to happen to the inspiration in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? Unless you concretize it into some actual concrete steps, it's going to be gone. It's going to disappear very fast. Right? Anytime you think about in your own life that you've been inspired or motivated to take on something new in your spiritual life, or even in your physical life, let's say in your spiritual life, you've been motivated, you heard something inspiring. Okay, I want to start learning Torah. I want to start learning the Parsha every week, or I want to start, going to a Parsha class or a shir every week, or I want to start going to services, Shabbat, whatever it is. You don't do something about it, make it real, then it's going to be gone. And what Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi is telling us is something even more. If you really want to make sustainable, transformative change in your life, in your spiritual life, you have to institute something into your life daily, consistently, daily, day in and day out, no matter what no matter how hard it is, no matter how busy you are, no matter what distractions come up, no matter what's going on or where you are or what challenges you're feeling that day or what issues come up. You have to make it a regular daily part of your life. And it actually goes a little bit deeper than that. It's not just a daily part of your life, but what did the verse say? It's a keves echad ta'aseh b'boker, ve'es keves hasheni ta'aseh ben arbayim. Bring one sheep in the morning, and one sheep in the afternoon. The daily offering wasn't a once a day thing; it was a twice a day. And Maimonides, the Rambam, writes in Sefer HaMitzvahs, where he codifies the laws of the Torah, he says it's one mitzvah, bringing the daily offering with two parts. There's morning part and afternoon part. You need both components. There's the morning sheep and the afternoon sheep, and together that comprises one mitzvah. So the mitzvah of bringing the daily sacrifice is do something in the morning, do something in the afternoon. And that is a template for us to sustain and to create transformative, actual, sustainable change in our lives, in our spiritual lives. And that's the secret of the Korban Tamid. That's why it's so important. Because yes, the Shema, of course, everything is ultimately about connection to Hashem. And yeah, of course, the way we get there is by learning how to treat other human beings and seeing other people as being in the image of God and appreciating and recognizing the divine spark in other people and loving everybody like we love ourselves. That's all very nice. But if we don't take that and put it into our lives in a regular, real, daily way, not only daily, but in the morning and in the afternoon, and make it a consistent, irrevocable part of our lives, then real change is never going to take place. So when we talk about, yeah, Jeffrey.
Just why is it necessarily the sacrificial aspect as opposed to davening every day, multiple times a day, or keeping kosher, or those other things, actions that are daily actions? So what makes the sacrificial what makes that the more? Why does that supersede the other daily things?
So that's a great question, and I'll tell you, like, just to try to understand that a little bit. When the temple stood, the daily sacrifice was at that time what daily prayer is today. So, for example, today we don't have sacrifices, and the way we supplement that, or the way we substitute for the daily sacrifices, says Maimonides and other many people, is through prayer. Okay, so prayer is to us what the daily sacrifice was in the times of the temple. So the daily sacrifice is really symbolic of any type of avoda, any type of service of Hashem, divine service of Hashem. It's like the prototype. So you're 100% right. It doesn't have to be. Right? I'm not suggesting. In fact, I would discourage you from even thinking about doing this. Going in your backyard every morning with a sheep and slaughtering it and building an altar there, and sacrificing a sheep every morning and every afternoon. Your neighbors probably will call the cops on you very fast, and they'll probably lock you up, right? But avoda, in that sense, divine service, takes on the form of, as you said, daily prayers. It takes on the form of daily Torah learning. It takes on the form of anything that you're doing in your mitzvah service, right? Is considered to be avoda. So the sacrifice is just sort of the prototype for that. So to answer your question, it would really be anything, any area where you feel like, let's say, for example, let's say a person says, I want to work on being more charitable. I want to work on giving more tzedakah. So the formula then would give a little bit of, you do it every day, and to do a little bit in the morning and a little bit in the afternoon, in the evening. So you put a pushki. Let's say you're going to give $1 a day to tzedakah, right? Or $2 a day to tzedakah every day. So put a pushki in your bedroom or whatever, and in the morning put $1 in, and in the afternoon or the evening put $1 in. That's what we're talking about. You want to make a change in your life, you've got to institute it into your life in a daily way, and it's got to be, to ideally do this in the full way, you got to do it once in the morning and once at night. So Howard, I'm going to come to your second question in 1 second, but that's what I just want to tie this to the 17th of Tammuz. When we talk about the 17th of Tammuz being the day that the Korban Tamid, that the daily sacrifice was no longer sustainable, that we had to stop bringing the daily sacrifice because we ran out of sheep during the siege of the temple, and we no longer had access to the animals. What that means in a deeper sense is that they lost the key to spiritual growth. It's symbolic of the fact that they lost the ability to sustain this spiritual growth in this way of consistency daily, twice a day. And the Korban Tamid, the daily sacrifice, contains the secret, contains the key to our spiritual growth, to transformative, sustainable, transformative change in our behavior. We need to use the model of the Korban Tamid, the daily sacrifice, to be able to enact that in our life. So when we lost that daily sacrifice, it means that we really lost to a great degree our ability to really create transformative, sustainable change in our lives. So that's a little bit about what this day is about. And that's what the Ramchal is saying over here, that if we want to overcome the tendency towards getting bogged down by the preoccupation with worldly matters in our lives, we need to follow the formula of the sages, which is reduce your involvement in business and involve yourself in Torah study. For even though it's essential to be involved in business, right? But it is not necessary that business involvement be so extensive that it does not leave him any room for his divine service. Indeed, this is why we are commanded to set aside fixed times for Torah study every single day. And by the way, it's not just a day, because the Torah says, you should involve yourself in Torah study yomam v'layla, day and night. So the real way to study Torah, let's say you committed to a half an hour a day of Torah study. So the real way to do that is 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night. Don't do it all in the morning. Do it twice. That's a big secret to sustaining change, is to do it twice. Don't just do it in the morning. So that's what we're talking about over here. That's the connection to this day. Les, I'm going to take your question in a second. Howard, you had a question before. I wanted to hear what you were going to say or comment. Right now you're on mute. You can't hear you.
Oh,
There you
actually,
go.
oh,
it's fine. And,
comment I want to add about something that's been rather helpful to me during these past 10 days, 2 weeks, and just facing the world in general. And that I think it was also in the weekly parasha or the Haftorah from, I think it was the prophet Micah, but David, you'll correct me, about daily thinking about doing justice, doing acts of loving kindness, and walking humbly with your God. And I just have been finding it very helpful, along with what all the other rabbis said.
yeah, that's beautiful, Brenda. That is from the Haftarah from Micah, exactly. And right, if you can follow that formula, you're doing great, right? Justice and kindness and humility, right? And I think that, and those are all very, very critical and important. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Les, I see you have a virtual hand up there as well.
Actually, I had a thought that I've thought about from time to time, and that is what it must have been like to be in the temple in the presence of a sacrifice. That is such a visceral experience where there's an animate animal there and it suddenly becomes inanimate. It is such a dramatic change. I think there's a reminder that it's the kind of emotion that stimulates that we aspire to when we connect with our mitzvot.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, that was definitely the part of the goal of that experience of the sacrifices was that visceral experience of being able to see it and feel it and smell it and everything that went into that. And without that, we really we're missing a lot. We're missing a lot, and we need that back. We really do need that back. That's a major part of our wholeness as our search for relationship with Hashem. That's missing. Right now, it's Judaism is so intellectual. Right? We need to be more experiential. We need to be more physical. We need to smell the sacrifices and taste them. And I'm getting hungry. Maybe it's just because I'm fasting, but I'm thinking about that. But okay, excellent. Let's go on a drop over here. Anyone else have anything that they want to interject into that conversation? So Ramchal explains the unique connection between studying Torah and acquiring the trait of Zehirus. If you notice, he just got done saying that we're commanded to set aside fixed times for Torah study, and that is essential. If you're overwhelmed, what did the rabbis say? And reduce your involvement in business and involve yourself in Torah study. If you're overwhelmed, bogged down by the worldly matters, the preoccupation with the physical affairs of your life, then it becomes impossible for your thoughts to turn to your deeds and your actions. So what's the remedy for that? What's the solution? The solution is Torah study. What's the connection there? Why did he say Torah study? Why did he say prayer? Why did he say tzedakah? Why didn't he say, exercise? I don't know. He specifically said that Torah study is the way to sort of combat the tendency that we have of over-involvement in our worldly matters, our business affairs. So he's going to explain right now that connection. We've already mentioned in the previous chapter that Torah study is the most critical necessity for a person to attain Zehirus, as indicated by the opening statement of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yoer, which we cited in the introduction, that Torah study brings one to Zehirus. It's what brings one to live in a focused state of watchfulness, a focused state of self-examination and self-analysis and recalibration when necessary. What leads one there is Torah study. And without Torah study, one will not attain Zehirus at all. Ramchal is being very, very serious with his words over here. He's not saying that Torah study is a good thing. If you want to get to Zehirus, I recommend Torah study. He's saying without it, you will not get there. It is an impossibility. One cannot acquire the trait of Zehirus if they're not involved in Torah study. It's Torah study that gets us there. As the rabbis of blessed memory said, an ignorant person, meaning one who is not engaged in the acquisition of wisdom. When I say wisdom, I mean Torah wisdom. Somebody who's not actively pursuing Torah wisdom cannot be a pious person. You can't live a life of holiness. You can come up with your own theories about what it means to be holy. And you can come up with your own ideas about what it means to live a spiritual life. But if you're Jewish and you're not engaged in Torah study and trying to acquire, when I say Torah study, I mean trying to acquire and internalize the wisdom, the divine wisdom of Torah, you will not reach a place of Zehirus. And you will not, it's impossible for you to live a holy spiritual life. And Ramchal explains why that is. This is because the creator of blessed memory, who created the Yetzer Hara within a person, right? We all have a Yetzer Hara. Where does it come from? It comes from Hashem. Hashem created the Yetzer Hara within us. He is the very one who created the Torah as the antidote for it. He created the disease, and he created the remedy for the disease. Right? It's sort of like, for those conspiracy theorists who believe that the COVID pandemic was manufactured in a lab somewhere, by the people who created the vaccine for the virus. I'm not saying I believe that, but I've heard people say that, right? So it's sort of that dynamic, right? Hashem created the disease in his lab, but he also created the vaccine for the disease. Okay, so he told you, yeah, I created this disease. If you want to call the Yetzer Hara a disease, it's really not a disease. It's really there for a constructive purpose. But I created this illness, this challenge, this difficulty called the Yetzer Hara, and I also created the way to overcome it. And I'm telling you what it is. I'm telling you what the vaccine is to the Yetzer Hara. It's Torah study. As the sages of blessed memory stated, that Hashem, so to speak, says, I created the evil inclination and I created the Torah as its antidote. So if you want to know how to be able to stand up to the Yetzer Hara, that negative inclination inside of you, that part of you that's always going to drive you to do the easy thing, to not do the right thing, to not be a spiritual, selfless, godlike person, but to take the course of least resistance and to go in the physical direction instead of the spiritual direction. If you want to know how to combat that, and how to vaccinate yourself against that, and how to remedy that, well, Hashem tells you, it's the Torah. That's what I created the Torah for. It's the remedy. Now, it's obvious that if the Creator did not create for this ailment, that if the Creator did not create for this ailment, namely the evil inclination, any remedy other than this one of Torah study, it is absolutely impossible for a person to be cured of this ailment without utilizing this remedy. Hashem said, not only did I create the remedy, it's hard, the antidote, the vaccine, the antiviral medication, fight the Yetzer Hara, but this is the only one on the market. Nothing else works. Any other vaccine or any other antiviral medication out there against this particular malady called the Yetzer Hara doesn't work. There's only one, and it's called Torah. Whoever thinks that he can be rescued from the evil inclination without Torah study is simply mistaken. And he will recognize his mistake in the end when he dies in a state of sin. Meaning when we get to the next world and we realize that the Yetzer Hara overpowered us and we were in the clutches and in the grasp of the Yetzer Hara our whole lives, and all we did was follow the impulses of the Yetzer Hara constantly and continuously, and it led us into every wrong corner of life. And instead of ending up our lives as spiritual, godlike people, as givers instead of takers, we ended up leaving this world as takers instead of givers, and we never developed that godly side of us. When we realize all that, what's going to happen, and we get to the next world, we're going to realize that had we studied Torah, had we been involved in Torah study, we would have been able to overcome this. But we didn't, and we couldn't, because we didn't engage in Torah study. For consider the evil inclination is really very strong within a person. We can all agree on that. And if left unchecked, then without the person's awareness, it grows constantly stronger within him and eventually dominates him. Right? Not only is the Yetzer Hara strong, but if we're not fighting it, if we're not in the rink, if we're not trying to overcome it, it's overcoming us. It's getting stronger and stronger. Hold on a second. It dominates us and it becomes stronger and stronger. So if he even employs all the strategies in the world, but does not take the one remedy that was created for it, which is the study of Torah, as I've written above, he will not be aware of it. He will not be aware of or even feel the strengthening of his spiritual illness until he dies in a state of sin and his soul is lost. Okay? You can try all the strategies in the world. You can do anything you want for your spiritual growth and be a better person. You can read any self-help book that exists out there. And by the way, the Talmud says, that if somebody tells you that there's wisdom among the nations, believe them. They're right. There's a lot of wisdom in these self-help books. And there's a lot of wisdom in other spirituality. And I'm not saying you shouldn't read self-help books. But if you think that that alone will get you to a place where you'll learn how to overcome and overpower the Yetzer Hara, you're mistaken. The Yetzer Hara is going to get stronger and stronger. Without you even knowing it, you're going to fall deeper and deeper into the domination and the clutches of the Yetzer Hara. And there's no way to stop it. And there's no way to remedy that without the one and only medication that works against the Yetzer Hara. The one who created the Yetzer Hara created the vaccine. And that is called learning Torah. And if you take it a step further to what we were saying before, Torah learning a little bit in the morning and a little bit at night. Every day, if you institute that into your life, you'll see you're a different person. You'll understand and recognize that you're just not the same. You'll look back and you'll notice something different. I'm not the same person. I'm kinder. I'm more selfless. I'm wiser. I'm making better decisions in my life. I'm doing the right thing. I'm helping more people. Whatever it is, you'll see change and transformation because you're combating the Yetzer Hara. But that only comes through Torah learning. And the ideal way to do that is to put it into your life in a daily way. And not only in a daily way, but if you can break it up into a twice a day, bookends. Start your day with a little Torah learning, end your day with a little Torah learning. It changes the whole day. That changes, influences everything that you're about. And that's what the Ramchal is advocating over. I'm going to stop and leave a few minutes for any questions or comments or thoughts. Anybody?
Yeah, David, the daily sacrifices. Who provides the sheep? I mean, does everybody have to bring 2 sheep a day? Or how does that work?
Well, that's a communal offering that's paid for by the half shekel that everybody gave, at right before Pesach, in the beginning of Nisan, that half shekel that everybody contributed. That was collected. That was like your tax, so to speak. And then the sheep were bought from that money. And therefore, it's representative of every single person in Am Yisrael. Everybody chipped in for it. But it's one sheep in the morning, one sheep in the afternoon, but paid for communally, and therefore atoning for everybody.
Great, thanks.
So as far as Torah study, does it have to be specifically from the Torah, the Talmud? Could be from authors after that? I mean, what
Anything that's Torah study, and that would include, it could include reading the
like Maimonides or something. Yeah.
Absolutely, it could be anything from reading the Torah portion with commentaries. If you're going to do that, I would recommend for sure the Stone Chumash is a very good one, the Art Scroll Stone Chumash, or maybe Rabbi Hirsch's commentary, or one of the Rabbi Sachs's commentary. But like reading the Torah portion every week with a commentary is a great way to do it. Studying, Maimonides Code, anything, studying the mitzvot, learning Mishnah, learning Talmud, going to a class, listening online, anything that fits into the category of Torah. And if anyone wants some specific direction or guidance on ideas or whatever, of course, I'm always here to help guide you in that. But studying Hasidic texts, or go scroll through artscroll.com or feldheim.com or whatever it is. There are millions and millions of amazing books that are available in English, Hebrew text, English text. It's all there, and it really will, change your life. All right. Well, everybody, Shavua Tov. Looking forward to seeing everyone. I'll be back. Ali and I are coming home on the 4th. We arrive on the 4th of August. We'll be there for 2.5 weeks. So we'll have some in-person learning. We're going to have a big Shabbat, Kiddush Shabbat afternoon, Shabbos morning, I think, actually on the 13th of August. So there's going to be lots of opportunities. It's going to be an all-day women's retreat with Allie and Eve. So definitely keep your eye out for the emails and the things that are going to be going on. I hope to get spend time with everybody. And everyone have a wonderful week. Shavua Tov. Safe.
So
Thank you, Rabbi. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. Feel free to reach out if you want ideas on Torah learning topics too.